The star would have turned 85 this year, and her 1981 death is still unsolved. Some celebs achieve strange immortality because they died young, beautiful, and under mysterious circumstances. There have been years of conspiracy theories about Marilyn Monroe, Princess Diana, and Whitney Houston, for example. But Natalie Wood is a special case because officials redefined her death 3 decades after the fact. Wood would be 85 this year. She was born July 20, 1938, and died November 29, 1981. She and Robert Wagner, her husband from December 1957 to April 1962, then again from July 1972 until her death, were on their boat Splendor in Catalina for Thanksgiving weekend, along with guest Christopher Walken and the captain, Dennis Davern. Everybody agrees on those facts. Otherwise, it's been decades of what Variety described at the time as speculation and as yet unanswered questions. Wood was found floating in the water, wearing a flannel nightgown and down jacket. On December 1, 1981, Variety headlined that it was ruled accidental. LA County Coroner Thomas Noguchi theorized she had been trying to board an inflatable dinghy and missed her step. He said her intoxication was one of the factors involved in her inability to respond to an emergency situation. Among the questions were why she would get on a dinghy on a cold, rainy night, whether she and Wagner had been fighting that evening, and why there were so many bruises on her body and arms. As Variety predicted, the speculation and questions continued for decades, fueled by the tabloids. Wagner's 2008 memoir offers the theory that Wood fell into the water as she was retying the dinghy that had been banging against the boat. The following year, Davern wrote his own book. He alleged Wagner had argued with Wood, then pushed her in the water. Davern claimed he'd withheld info in 1981 because Wagner had intimidated him into silence. People from nearby boats said they'd heard arguments but hadn't volunteered that information since it had been declared an accident. At this point, the mainstream media joined in the speculation. The LA County Sheriff's Office reopened the investigation in November 2011 and changed the cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors. Lieutenant John Corina and Detective Ralph Hernandez told interviewers the facts didn't add up. Wagner declined to speak to investigators and in February 2018 was named a person of interest, but he was not named a suspect. Wood's sister Lana wrote her book in 2021 and again points the finger at Wagner. "I don't think that it was planned. It's not first-degree anything, but it happened." Walken has remained silent for the entire time. In 1981, he was starring with Wood in MGM's Brainstorm, a science fiction movie directed by the great Douglas Trumbull. Wood only had 5 days remaining on the film, but they included key scenes. For a year after her death, Variety carried multiple stories as MGM, the filmmakers and insurance carriers decided whether to complete the film or abandon it. Finally, in fall 1983, Brainstorm was ready. Variety's review said it was all about the visuals, not character or plot. Majority of players, including stars Walken and Wood, seem merely along for the ride. But Wood's death hung like a cloud over the film, and, to some, over her whole career. She worked frequently as a youngster in titles like Skudda Who, Skudai, which also included Monroe in the cast, Father Was a Fullback, and The Silver Chalice. But she first made an impact in the 1947 Christmas classic, Miracle on 34th Street, which was oddly released during the summer. The 1955 film Rebel Without a Cause established her as a teen fave and a real actor. At 17, she earned her first Oscar nomination. The film, still admired, stars 3 young actors who all died tragic deaths: Wood, James Dean, and Sal Mineo. After a key role in The Searchers, 1956, with John Wayne, Wood starred in 2 1958 dramas, Marjorie Morningstar, with Gene Kelly, and Kings Go Forth, with Frank Sinatra and Tony Curtis. But a peak years was 1961, with Splendor in the Grass, her second Oscar nom, and West Side Story. Variety praised Wood and Warren Beatty in the former film, which showed great care, compassion and cinematic flair, and raved about West Side Story, saying Wood was entrancing. Her third and final Oscar nom came with the then daring Love with the Proper Stranger, 1963, in which she becomes pregnant after a one-night stand with Steve McQueen. In 1965 and 1966, she co-starred with rising star Robert Redford in Inside Daisy Clover and This Property is Condemned. Wood and Redford had originally met, briefly, when both attended Van Nuys High School. After 3 years away from acting, she had a big hit with Paul Mazursky's Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, 1969. She didn't make another film for 6 years, aside from a cameo as herself in Redford's The Candidate. She did some of her best work on television, including Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1976, with Wagner and Laurence Olivier, and the miniseries From Here to Eternity, 1979. Like most actors, she had career ups and downs, and her output wasn't prolific. Fans remember the classics and ignore the low points. Younger generations may not know most of her work, but might remember hearing about her death. It was a lonely and sordid ending for someone who had been in the public eye most of her life. Wood played many characters who were true blue reliable, and others who were high-strung and neurotic. In every case, audiences liked her and wanted to see her have a happy ending, which is just one reason why real life is tougher than movies. Let's take a look at his life. Natalie Wood, born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko, July 20, 1938 to November 29, 1981, was an American actress who began her career in film as a child actor and successfully transitioned to young adult roles. She was the recipient of 4 Golden Globes, and received 3 Academy Award nominations. Wood began her acting career at age 4 and was given a co-starring role at age 8 in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947. As a teenager, she earned a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her performance in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, followed by a role in John Ford's The Searchers, 1956. Wood starred in the musical films West Side Story, 1961, and Gypsy, 1962, and she received nominations for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performances in Splendor in the Grass, 1961, and Love with the Proper Stranger, 1963. Her career continued with films such as Sex and the Single Girl, 1964, Inside Daisy Clover, 1964, and Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, 1969. During the 1970s, Wood began a hiatus from film and had a child with husband Robert Wagner, whom she had previously married and divorced. Wagner and Wood remarried after she divorced her second husband. She acted in only 2 feature films throughout the decade, but appeared slightly more often in television productions, including a remake of the film From Here to Eternity, 1979, for which she received a Golden Globe Award. Wood's films represented a coming-of-age for her and for Hollywood films in general. Critics have suggested that her cinematic career represents a portrait of modern American womanhood in transition, as she was one of the few to take both child roles and those of middle-aged characters. Natalia's mother, Maria, was born in Barnaul, southern Siberia. Maria's father, Stepan Zudilov, owned soap and candle factories, as well as an estate outside the city. With the start of the Civil War, his family left Russia, resettling as refugees in the Chinese city of Harbin. Maria married Alexander Tachilov in China and had a daughter, Olga, 1928 to 2015. Natalia liked to describe her family as having been either gypsies or landowning aristocrats in Russia. In her youth, her mother had dreamed of becoming an actress or ballet dancer. Natalia and her sisters were raised Russian Orthodox. As an adult, she stated, "I'm very Russian, you know." She spoke both English and Russian with an American accent. Biographer Warren Harris wrote that under the family's needy circumstances, Wood's mother may have transferred her ambitions to her middle daughter. Her mother would take little Natalia to the movies as often as she could. Natalie's only professional training was watching Hollywood child stars from her mother's lap, notes Harris. Wood would later recall this time, "My mother used to tell me that the cameraman Shortly after pointed Natalia his lens was out born at the in San audience at the Francisco, end of the Paramount her family newsreel moved to was Santa taking Rosa. my picture. Natalia, I'd pose and often smile called like he was Natasha, going to make me the famous Russian or diminutive, something, was I noticed believed by everything members my of mother the crew told me during a film shoot in downtown Santa Rosa. Her mother soon moved the family to Los Angeles in order to pursue a film career for her daughter. After Natalia started acting as a child, David Lewis and William Getz, studio executives at RKO Radio Pictures, changed her name to Natalie Wood, in reference to director Sam Wood. Wood's younger sister, Svetlana Gurdin, the family had changed their surname, was born in Santa Monica after the move. Now known as Lana Wood, she also became an actress. Career: child actress. A few weeks before her 5th birthday, Wood made her film debut as a character actress in a 15-second scene in the film Happy Land, 1943. Despite the brief part, she attracted the notice of the director, Irving Pichel. He remained in contact with Wood's family for 2 years, advising them when another role came up. The director telephoned Wood's mother and asked her to bring her daughter to Los Angeles for a screen test. Wood's mother became so excited that she packed the whole family off to Los Angeles to live, writes Harris. Wood's father opposed the idea, but his wife's overpowering ambition to make Natalie a star took priority. According to Wood's younger sister Lana, Pichel discovered her and wanted to adopt her. Wood, then 7 years old, got the part. She played a post-World War II German orphan, opposite Orson Welles as Wood's guardian and Claudette Colbert, in Tomorrow is Forever, 1946. When Wood was unable to cry on cue, her mother tore a butterfly to pieces in front of her to ensure she would sob for a scene. Welles later said that Wood was a born professional, so good, she was terrifying. After Wood acted in another film directed by Pickell, her mother signed her with 20th Century Fox for her first major role in Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, starring Maureen O'Hara, which has become a Christmas classic. Wood was counted among the top child stars in Hollywood after the film and was so popular that Macy's invited her to appear in the store's annual Thanksgiving Day parade. Film historian John C. Tibbets wrote that for the next few years following her success in Miracle, Wood played roles as a daughter in a series of family films. Fred MacMurray's daughter in Father was a fullback, 1949, and Dear Brat, 1951. Margaret Sullivan's daughter in No Sad Songs for Me, 1950, the youngest sister in Our Very Own, 1950 film. James Stewart's daughter in The Jackpot, 1950, Joan Blondell's neglected daughter in The Blue Veil, 1951, and the daughter of Bette Davis's character in The Star, 1952. In all, Wood appeared in over 20 films as a child. Because Wood was a minor during her early years as an actress, she received her primary education on the studio lots wherever she was contracted. California law required that until age 18, child actors had to spend at least 3 hours per day in the classroom, notes Harris. She was a straight-A student, and one of the few child actors to excel at arithmetic. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who directed her in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, said that, "In all my years in the business, I never met a smarter moppet." Wood remembered that period in her life, saying, "I always felt guilty when I knew the crew was sitting around waiting for me to finish my 3 hours. As soon as the teacher let us go, I ran to the set as fast as I could." Wood's mother continued to play a significant role in her daughter's early career, coaching her and micromanaging aspects of her career even after Wood acquired agents. As a child actress, Wood received significant media attention. By age 9, she had been named the most exciting juvenile motion picture star of the year by Parents magazine. Teen stardom. In the 1953-54 television season, Wood played in Morrison, the teenage daughter in The Pride of the Family, an ABC situation comedy. She successfully made the transition from child star to ingenue at age 16 when she co-starred with James Dean and Sal Mineo in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, Nicholas Ray's film about teenage rebellion. Wood was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She followed this with a small but crucial role in John Ford's The Searchers, 1956. Wood graduated from Van Nuys High School in 1956. She signed with Warner Brothers and was kept busy during the remainder of the decade in many girlfriend roles, which she found unsatisfying. The studio cast her in 2 films opposite Tab Hunter, hoping to turn the duo into a box office draw that never materialized. Among the other films made at this time were Kings Go Forth and Marjorie Morningstar, both 1958. As Marjorie Morningstar, Wood played the role of a young Jewish girl in New York City who has to deal with the social and religious expectations of her family as she tries to forge her own path and separate identity. Adult career. Tibbets observed that Wood's characters in Rebel, Searchers, and Morningstar began to show her widening range of acting styles. Her former, childlike sweetness was now being combined with a noticeable restlessness that was characteristic of the youth of the 1950s. After Wood appeared in the box office flop All the Fine Young Cannibals, 1960, she lost momentum. Wood's career was in a transition period, having until then consisted of roles as a child or as a teenager. Splendor in the Grass. Biographer Suzanne Finstad wrote that a turning point in Wood's life as an actress took place when she saw the film A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951. She was transformed, in awe of director Elia Kazan and of Vivien Leigh's performance, who became a role model for Natalie. Her roles raised the possibility that one's sensitivity could mark a person as a kind of victim, noted Tibbets. After a series of bad films, her career was already in decline, according to author Douglas Rathgeb. She was then cast in Kazan's Splendor in the Grass, 1961, with Warren Beatty. Kazan wrote in his 1997 memoir that the sages of the film community declared her washed up as an actress, but he still wanted to interview her for his next film. When I saw her, I detected behind the well-mannered, young wife front a desperate twinkle in her eyes. I talked with her more quietly then and more personally. I wanted to find out what human material was there, what her inner life was. Then she told me she was being psychoanalyzed. That did it. Poor R.J. Wagner, I said to myself. I liked Bob Wagner, I still do. Kazan cast Wood as the female lead in Splendor, and her career rebounded. He felt that despite her earlier innocent roles, she had the talent and maturity to go beyond them. In the film, Beatty's character was deprived of sexual love with Wood's character, and as a result turns to another, looser, girl. Wood's character could not handle the sexuality and after a breakdown was committed to a mental institution. Kazan writes that he cast her in the role partly because he saw in Wood's personality a true blue quality with a wanton side that is held down by social pressure, adding that she clings to things with her eyes, a quality he found especially appealing. Later career. Wood reunited on the screen with Robert Wagner in the television movie of the week The Affair, 1973, and with Laurence Olivier and Wagner in an adaptation of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1976, for the British series Laurence Olivier Presents broadcast as a special by NBC. She made cameo appearances on Wagner's primetime detective series Switch in 1978 as Bubble Bath Girl, and Heart to Heart in 1979 as Movie Star. Returning to feature films after a 6-year absence, Wood starred in the comedy Crime Caper Peeper, 1975, opposite former real-life beau Michael Caine. After another lengthy break, she appeared in the ensemble disaster film Meteor, 1979, with Sean Connery and the sex comedy The Last Married Couple in America, 1980, with George Segal. Her performance in the latter was praised and considered reminiscent of her performance in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. In Last Married Couple, Wood broke ground. Although an actress with a clean, middle-class image, she used the F word in a frank marital discussion with her husband, George Segal. In this period, Wood had more success in television, receiving high ratings and critical acclaim in 1979 for The Cracker Factory and especially the miniseries film From Here to Eternity, 1979, with Kim Basinger and William Devane. Wood's performance in the latter won her a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in 1980. She starred in The Memory of Eva Riker, released in May 1980, which proved to be her last completed production. At the time of her death, Wood was filming the science fiction film Brainstorm, 1983, co-starring Christopher Walken and directed by Douglas Trumbull. She was scheduled to make her stage debut on February 12, 1982 in Anastasia at Amundsen Theater with Wendy Hiller. Wood had also purchased film rights to the Barbara Wersba book, Country of the Heart, and was planning to star with Timothy Hutton in the drama about the professional romantic relationship between a tough-minded poet and her much younger student. The material was eventually adapted into a 1990 TV movie starring Jane Seymour. She expected to follow her performance as Anastasia on the stage with a starring stint in a movie adaptation of the work. The ending of Brainstorm had to be rewritten and Wood's character written out of at least 3 scenes, while a stand-in and soundalikes were used to replace Wood for some of her crucial shots. The film was released posthumously on September 30, 1983, and was dedicated to Wood in the closing credits. Wood appeared in 56 films for cinema and television. In one of her last interviews before her death, she was defined as our sexual conscience on the silver screen. Following her death, Time magazine noted that although critical praise for Wood had been sparse throughout her career, she always had work. Personal life. In September 1956, Wood had a brief, and by all accounts unconsummated, relationship with Elvis Presley. Her 2 marriages to actor Robert Wagner were highly publicized. They first married on December 28, 1957 in Scottsdale, Arizona. On June 20, 1961, the couple announced their separation in a joint press release, and divorced 10 months later on April 27, 1962. Following this starter marriage, Wood dated Warren Beatty, Michael Caine, and David Niven Jr. She also had a broken engagement in 1965 with shoe manufacturer Ladislav Blatnik. On May 30, 1969, Wood married British producer Richard Gregson after dating for nearly 3 years. They had a daughter, Natasha, born 1970. Wood filed for divorce from Gregson on August 4, 1971, and it was finalized on April 12, 1972. After a short-lived romance with future California Governor Jerry Brown, Wood resumed her relationship with Wagner at the end of January 1972. They remarried on July 16 aboard the Ramblin' Rose, anchored off Paradise Cove in Malibu. Their daughter Courtney was born in 1974. Wood's sister Lana Wood recalls this period. Her marriage was considered to be one of the best in Hollywood, and there is no question that she was a devoted, loving, even adoring, mother and stepmother. She and Arjay had begun with love and built from there. They had overcome each other's problems and had reached an accommodation with time and the changes time brings. As with anybody else who has settled into making a long marriage work, they were far more determined than most people to make it work. Wood and Wagner remained married until her death on November 29, 1981, at age 43. In 2013, retired FBI agent Donald Wilson claimed publicly that he and Wood had a 4-year affair from 1973 to 1977 while she was married to Wagner. Wilson has discussed his alleged affair with Wood on social media, in tabloid articles and in an on-camera interview for the cable network Reels. Suzanne Finstad's 2001 biography of Wood alleges that she was raped by a powerful actor when she was 16. Through the recollection of Wood's close friends, which included late actors Scott Marlowe and Dennis Hopper, Finstad summarizes. Though her 5 close friends' memories of some details or timing differ after 45 years, the essence of what each recalls Natalie confiding to them is the same, that the same married film star lured or tricked Natalie, raped her so brutally she was physically injured, and she was too frightened or intimidated to report it to the police. Natalie hated her former screen idol afterward, shuddering if she heard his name. She would keep the horrible secret, and behave as if nothing happened whenever their paths intersected, too schooled by Mudd, her mother, in the politics of Hollywood to cross a powerful movie star. In 2018, Lana Wood said during a 12-part podcast about her sister's life that the attack had occurred inside the Chateau Marmont during an audition and went on 4 hours. According to Professor Cynthia Lucia, who studied the attack, Wood's rape was quite brutal and violent. Death. Wood died at age 43 during the making of Brainstorm while on a weekend boat trip to Catalina Island on board Wagner's yacht Splendor. Outside of drowning, many of the circumstances are unknown. It was never determined how she entered the water. Wood was with her husband Robert Wagner, Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and Splendor's captain Dennis Davern on the evening of November 28, 1981. Authorities recovered her body at 8 a.m. on November 29, 1 mile away from the boat, with a small Valiant brand inflatable dinghy beached nearby. Wagner said that she was not with him when he went to bed. The autopsy report revealed that she had bruises on her body and arms, as well as an abrasion on her left cheek, but no indication as to how or when the injuries occurred. Davern had previously stated that Wood and Wagner argued that evening, which Wagner denied at the time. In his memoir Pieces of My Heart, Wagner admitted that he had an argument with Wood before she disappeared. The autopsy found that Wood's blood alcohol content was 0.14% and that there were traces of a motion sickness pill and a painkiller in her bloodstream, both of which increase the effects of alcohol. Los Angeles County Coroner Thomas Noguchi ruled the cause of her death to be accidental drowning and hypothermia. According to Noguchi, Wood had been drinking and she may have slipped while trying to reboard the dinghy. Her sister Lana expressed doubts, alleging that Wood could not swim and had been terrified of water all her life, and that she would never have left the yacht on her own by dinghy. 2 witnesses who were on a nearby boat stated that they had heard a woman scream for help during the night. Wood was buried in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. Representatives of international media, photographers, and members of the public tried to attend her funeral, but all were required to remain outside the cemetery walls. Among the celebrities were Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, Fred Astaire, Rock Hudson, David Niven, Gregory Peck, Gene Kelly, Elia Kazan, and Laurence Olivier. Olivier flew in from London in order to attend the service. The case was reopened in November 2011 after Davern publicly stated that he had lied to police during the initial investigation and that Wood and Wagner had an argument that evening. He alleged that Wood had been flirting with Walken, that Wagner was jealous and enraged, and that Wagner had prevented Davern from turning on the searchlights and notifying authorities after Wood's disappearance. Davern alleged that Wagner was responsible for her death. Walken hired a lawyer, cooperated with the investigation, and was not considered a suspect by authorities. In 2012, Los Angeles County Chief Coroner Lakshmanan Satyavagiswaran amended Wood's death certificate and changed the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The amended document included a statement that it is not clearly established how Wood ended up in the water. Detectives instructed the coroner's office not to discuss or comment on the case. On January 14, 2013, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office offered a 10-page addendum to Wood's autopsy report. The addendum stated that Wood might have sustained some of the bruises on her body before she went into the water, but that this could not be definitively determined. Forensic pathologist Michael Hunter speculated that Wood was particularly susceptible to bruising because she had taken the drug Synthroid. In February 2018, Wagner was named a person of interest in the investigation. He has denied any involvement. In a 2018 report, the Los Angeles Times cited the coroner's report from 2013 saying that Wood had unexplained fresh bruising on her right forearm, left wrist, and right knee, a scratch on her neck and a superficial scrape on her forehead. Officials said that it is possible that she was assaulted before she drowned. For its last 20 years, Splendor, the 55-foot yacht on which Wood had been aboard on the night of her death, had been in the Ala Wai small boat harbor near Waikiki in Honolulu, Hawaii, but was in extremely poor condition. Its owner had accrued $12,000 in fees for its illegal mooring between June 2019 and January 2020. On January 27, 2020, JS International Incorporated removed the vessel from the harbor, then dismantled and demolished it after they salvaged what they could.
Thank you for watching the whole video, hope you liked it. If you like any celebrity actor, if you like his story and interesting information, then please comment us. Thank you. Please subscribe your channel.